It's just a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about this conversation with Lesley and Rosylin this afternoon. Let me take a minute to just sort of frame this for you. We are looking at this idea of wellness and well-being, and we're specifically looking through the lens of a short essay that was written by Sebene Selassie, a well-known meditation teacher. Some of you may know her through the app 10% Happier. She's been a meditation leader for a number of years. She was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer herself and has sort of offered some thoughts that we are using to frame this conversation today. So I wanted to begin by just reading out a short passage, don't worry, this won't go on too long, of just some of her thoughts. So this is from Sebene Selassie, and she writes, "Last summer, when I was diagnosed with metastatic cancer, I was reminded of some of the words of the pioneering educator and poet Bell Hooks in the course of her own illness. Bell Hooks wrote, 'One of the mighty illusions that is constructed in our culture is that all pain is a negation of worthiness, that the real chosen people, the real worthy people, are the people that are most free from pain.' These words," and this is Sebene again, "reveal to me an attitude from our culture that I had unconsciously adopted in my own life. Often the marketing of wellness presents physical health as a marker of our worth. And since wellness is now an industry, it sells success. Eat, fast, breathe, meditate, buy your way to physical robustness, as if there's a static condition of being forever young and pain-free. And if physical health signals success, then illness, disability, aging, and pain are seen as failures, and failure implies fault. This way of thinking leads us to blame ourselves. If only I hadn't walked so far, I wouldn't be feeling this pain. If only I had done more yoga, eat more organic, blah, blah, blah. I caused this. In fact, however, it is this wellness myth that is sick. And one remedy for it is a broader well-being. While wellness focuses narrowly on physical health, well-being encompasses a broader, more holistic alignment that is not contingent on our bodies being perfect or pain-free. So it is this broader idea of well-being that we are exploring today. And let me say to all of you that are out there joining us, I know we have a range of people from newly diagnosed metastatic to people that have been living with metastatic disease for a number of years, that this conversation is not intended to be prescriptive. Nobody is telling you what to do. We're offering the perspectives of these two women as they've worked this out in their own lives. If this is helpful for you, great, use it. If it doesn't fit for you, please feel free to follow your own star. There's way too much telling people how to live, so we're not trying to do that. So I just want to be clear about that. So again, Lesley and Rosylin, so nice to be here with you this afternoon. And Lesley, I'm going to start with you and ask you, sir, how does this difference between the concept of wellness in terms of physical health and the broader idea of well-being, how does that resonate for you in your life?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to participate today. So that essay really resonated with me because I think that for those of us that have been diagnosed with metastatic cancer, or just cancer in general, we go through when we're first diagnosed this whole thing of what did I do? What did I do wrong? And I think it takes some time for us to realize that there is nothing that we did to bring cancer into our lives. Cancer is random and it doesn't care. It just wants, it doesn't go around choosing people that it's going to pick on. It just happens. And I know that when I was first diagnosed, wellness looked a lot different than it does now for me. I was a mom and went to the gym and ate right and trying to live up to maybe that social media paradigm of what wellness needs to look like. And then boom, oh, you're diagnosed not only with
Yeah.
breast cancer, but you're stage 4 breast cancer, which means that you're incurable. So the first thing that you think about is, oh my gosh, you know, I thought I did everything right. I nursed my babies. I ate all the right foods. I was active. And so right there comes almost like your challenge of, okay, well, what does wellness and well-being mean for me now? And I think that I focused on my well-being immediately upon being diagnosed, knowing that I didn't know how to deal with my wellness at first because I was just so sick and I was so depressed about this diagnosis that I had received that I didn't know what it all meant, the physical wellness part. But I knew that I had a part in what my well-being could look like or might look like. It did take some time, but yeah, definitely a place where I think that sometimes there's miscommunication between the two and we can get lost in it.
When I love how you're differentiating between having a part in it versus it being your fault. That, you know, it's a subtle distinction, but it's a really important. I appreciate you talking about that. Rosylin, do you want to say how you relate to any of these concepts?
Well, I think the first thing for me was I had to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't perfect, that maybe I didn't go to the gym as often as I should have. Maybe I didn't eat correctly all the time, every day. But coming to the realization, you know, as Lesley said, is that cancer picks on everybody. You can do all of those things and have this feeling of, well, I was perfect. I was doing everything right. And then it all went wrong. So I never had that feeling of, because I knew that I wasn't perfect. But by the same token, um, I didn't take it, I know this may sound strange, I didn't take it personally. I don't think that cancer said, let me look up and see where Roz is today, and I'm going to tap her and make her be this person. And so for me, you know, I've never asked why me. I think I've asked why not me? And what can I do with this diagnosis that will make a difference, not only in my life, but in the lives of the women that I've met along the way and those that are going to come behind me. So, you know, as Lesley said, I didn't know what my wellness was actually going to be, but I knew that my well-being could not be mirrored in grief or depression or feeling like I was to blame, because to me, that would mean that cancer won or is winning. Um, and so I'm a conqueror, you know, and that's the way I thought of myself from the very first time I heard the words, you know, that cancer is a part of your life, which for me was actually in 2015. And I did everything right after that. So the doctor said, you know, 2 surgeries, 8 rounds of chemotherapy, 33 rounds of radiation. Okay, you're all good. And then September 2019 comes and I find out it's not all good. And it's never going to be the same again.
You've talked before about your use of that word conqueror rather than survivor, that for you that has a lot of meaning.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Do you want to say any more about how you landed on that?
I mean, I understand that survivor, you know, is a term and it's an accepted term, and there's nothing wrong with it. But for me, I just feel like if I survived it, that just kind of means that I went through it. A conqueror to me means that I've got it. It doesn't have me, and that is the difference. And that's how I live my life. That's how I have to embrace this journey, as a conqueror. You know, as somebody who isn't going to back down, who will run into brick walls, but will find a way around the wall, run into closed doors or windows, but will find a way to open them or get around them. And so for me, Conqueror it just works. It works for me.
Thanks. Now, Lesley, you've been living with metastatic disease for over 10 years now. Is that correct? So I'm
on my 10th year, yes.
On your 10th year. So I'm curious how your ideas on this have changed from when your initial diagnosis to, how they've evolved and changed in terms of your views on well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was first diagnosed, the only thing that I wanted was to definitely, stay alive. And I was willing to do anything and everything that the oncologist at that time wanted me to do. And so I really wasn't at the place where I was advocating for myself right away. And as you begin to walk down this road that you've been given, and as you start to advocate for yourself, and as you start to learn more about the disease, for me, it went from, okay, I want to do everything that I possibly can. And my friend Kelly Shanahan would say, you could take my right arm and my left leg because I want to be here to, watch my kids graduate. And, I still had a daughter that was in high school. My sons were in their 20s. But I would have done anything. I would have chopped off my arm to be able to watch my daughter graduate high school. And, that's still it's still true. My oldest is getting married. I do not have any grandchildren yet. I'm waiting. But at the same time, wellness has just taken on, and well-being has taken on a different perspective for me where it's all about quality of life. So I have been through some, my treatment in the beginning where I ended up in the hospital for almost a month with sepsis. And that was when I started advocating for myself and started asking some really, really hard questions of my team, ended up getting a second opinion, then getting a whole brand new medical oncology team somewhere else where I could, more or less be on the driver's seat when I needed to, and then be on the passenger seat when I needed to. So, I won't say that it gets easier as the years go on. I'm very thankful to have going on 10 years now. But, there are still days when I feel horrible. There are still days that I grieve the losses that I have incurred from having this disease. And I think that it's really important for us to take these personal inventories of our lives, and what are our wins and what are our losses, and to really, embrace those things as well, because they are part of the road of living with metastatic breast cancer.
Thank you. It sounds like for both of you, you've made some deliberate, conscious decisions about what to prioritize, what to put on the back burner. And sometimes I think when people do that, the people around them don't understand that or aren't always supportive of that. And I'm wondering if each of you could speak to, are there people, activities, situations that you've had to move away from or set limits from just as you pursue your own well-being? Rosylin, do you want to say anything about that?
For me, I really can't think of, I certainly don't work full time anymore, in my profession, if you will. I've spent my whole life in public relations or being somebody's spokesperson. And I've decided that this role is by far my most important PR role. It's my most important spokesperson role. And I've been incredibly blessed, with a family who has willingly gone with me and goes with me every day on this journey. And that's just not just my husband and my two children, but I have a host of first cousins and second cousins who are just, always on my side. And on days when I'm down and they don't even know that I'm down, I'll get a call or a text or receive a card in the mail from one of them that reminds me that this is a joint journey, that they are with me. So my family is very important to me. My friends are very important to me. I've had a really close knit group of friends, and I'm happy to say that none of them have abandoned me. I have I've become closer to people who I once considered, friends, associates, but not friends. Some of those people have merged to the top and have become really close friends for me. So, and then there's my faith, and that has been incredibly important to me. And I couldn't do this journey alone. And I've got tons of, scripture and cards and things that people have sent me along the way that have uplifted me in this journey. And so I call them my 3 F's: my family, my faith, my friends. And then it's just my fortitude. I'm just one of those people that I don't like taking no for an answer. If you tell me no, then my position is that I clearly didn't give you enough information for you to make the right choice. You said the wrong thing. So I have a lot of fortitude, and all of that has come together and gelled for me. And if anything, I've made new friends and new acquaintances along the way. And so I guess maybe the only thing that I gave up officially was my job at the airport. I worked at the airport as their VP of communications and chief spokesperson. I don't do that anymore. Some days I miss it, particularly when I hear a story that comes over the airways that's not done as well as it should be. I think, well, I should just go in here and just get dressed and go to work. But that quickly passes, and so this is my work now. This is my clarion call to try to make a difference along the way. And if I can do that, then this journey is worthwhile.
Thank you. I hear a lot of appreciation and gratitude for things that have been in your life that maybe took on even greater significance, the people, and that's lovely.
Yeah, it really has. Somebody's asked me before, because a lot of people don't understand what metastatic breast cancer means. And so when I explained it to them, and I just cut straight to the chase and say, okay, there is no cure, this is terminal. And I get these responses like, well, how can you be so positive every single day if you know you're living with a terminal diagnosis? And my answer is always, I don't know what world you live in, but we are all terminal. It just so happens that somebody has told me what I am likely to die of. And that's the only difference between you and me. We're all terminal. And when you stop and think about it like that, it puts life in a different perspective.
Thank you. Lesley, I wanted to throw that question out to you too, as in terms of things you've had to do differently, and maybe some people do understand and support, and maybe some people don't, sort of boundaries you've had to set, or just wanted you to speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I also lost my job when I was diagnosed. I ran a nonprofit that did therapeutic art in the prison systems in Southern California. And I really thought that it was my life work and I was going to do it forever because I absolutely loved it. My friends would joke that if there's anybody that loves to go to prison, it's Lesley, because I was like skipping through those gates because I was just so happy to be there. And so having to give that up was devastating for me. So that was the first thing. I did lose some friendships. I was abandoned by people that I thought were really good friends, and all of a sudden they just disappeared from the radar. And to this day, I don't have any clarity or answers of why that happened, and that's okay. And I did have to, put up some boundaries, and it wasn't easy at first, but I have amazing girlfriends that stepped in and basically held up the rope and said, okay, this is your boundary. We're making it for yourself. You need to stop and you need to take care of you. And we are here to make sure that you do that. So I was very appreciative of that. And I think one of the hardest things for me is losing. I have two older boys, and then my daughter is my youngest. And I missed out on her whole senior year of high school because I was so sick. And that was devastating for me. It still is, thinking about it, because then she went off to college and she was gone for 4 years. And so now that, she is living back on the mainland, just trying to rebuild that relationship that I felt that we had lost through just, cancer diagnosis and college and all of that, rebuilding that has been very important to me. But, one of the things that I did that I talk about a lot is that I took a 1-year life sabbatical. So, and I realized that I was very fortunate to do that. So my husband at the time, he's now my ex-husband, I've gone through a divorce. We sold our big, huge house that we raised our kids in, and we moved to the beach. And I literally shut out everything from my life for a year. No social media. I didn't do any extracurricular things. I quit everything that I did to really get to know who I was as a person. Who is Lesley? You know, without the titles of mom, wife, nonprofit, owner. What does that look like, and who is she? And it took me quite a while to get back to, oh my goodness, remember you love the outdoors. Okay, well, let's explore that. And I really feel that it was one of the pivotal times after my diagnosis that I took that has helped to kind of guide me in what I want for my life. And I'm very much intentional about what I do in my life, who is in my life, where I spend my time, who I spend my time with. And so those are some of the things that I've been through.
Thank you. This idea that was mentioned in the essay about health and well-being equating to worth, we're sort of bombarded with those messages, right? In social media, everywhere we look, health, health, health equals worthiness. And I'm just wondering if there have been times when that has been triggering for you and how you've handled that. Lesley, your eyes got really big. I'm going to guess that's a yes. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I feel like we are bombarded all the time by what wellness should look like. And, so personally, I'm hormone positive, HER2 negative. So being on all of these anti-hormone therapies, has taken its toll on my body, like a lot of the other treatments take its toll. We have these side effects that, the dry skin and the itchiness and the hot flashes. I was catapulted into menopause at 47. I gained 30 pounds, being on anti-hormone therapies. And that comes with a lot of, oh my gosh, why is this happening to my body? All of a sudden there's this little belly growing, and, what can I do about it? And I think it's really important for all of us to realize that the road that we're walking down with metastatic breast cancer is all just so very unique. So there's going to be those of us that are gaining weight, those of us that are losing weight, those that have diarrhea, those that don't have diarrhea. those that have a lot of energy, those that do not have a lot of energy, but really, knowing that you are your person, and don't compare yourself to anybody else. Don't compare yourself to somebody else on Facebook support group or on Twitter, on the TV, because your life is supposed to happen the way that your life is supposed to happen. And no one should be able to steal that from you. You are the captain of your ship. So
Beautiful. Thank you. Rosylin, you had a reaction when I mentioned that also. I'm curious, how do you deal with this bombarding of these messages?
Well, I think I'm still figuring that out, and deciding that no matter what the message is, I have to have a clear path, and I have to, and like Lesley said, basically the universe unfolds exactly as it should, and I have to follow my path. And so, Lesley talked about, gaining 30 pounds, losing 30 pounds, whatever. I go from some hair to no hair. And hair really doesn't bother me. I've always had a really short, since college, a really short haircut anyway. So when my hair started coming out the first time in 2015, I remember my daughter was home from college, and I woke her up and I said, well, we're going over to the salon. And she just kind of looked at me like, okay, for what? And so we go over to the salon, and I sit down in the chair and I say, okay, Charles, just shave my head. And there are these women who we call them the Saturday morning girls. They were there every Saturday morning, and I'd come about once every 6 weeks or so. And so I was in there, and all the Saturday morning girls were there. It was early, and I was getting my head shaved. And one of the ladies walked in, and her name's Michelle, and I'll never forget the look on her face. And she said, what are you doing? And so we explained, what the process was. And my daughter said to me later, so after we left the salon, we went shopping. And so my daughter said to me, it was only after we got to the mall that she really got comfortable with the idea of me being bald. She said, because you were walking around there like you had a head full of hair, and it just didn't matter to you. And because it didn't matter to you, it doesn't matter to me. So, there are all sorts of messages out there, and I just don't get too hung up on the messages. One message that does radiate with me now that I am metastatic, is the disparities that exist in healthcare, especially for Black people, for Black women. I can honestly say that, I haven't felt that. I've got a team that I believe is vested in me, and is concerned about me. But I have met so many people along the way who don't have that, and who are missing treatments, missing tests, missing lots of things because, they don't know how to fight back with the insurance company. They don't know how to not take no for an answer. They leave their doctor's offices with more questions than answers. So those are the kinds of things that concern me most, is the disparity in healthcare, and can I do something that makes that different? And that's my focus.
And that segues, Rosylin, beautifully into the next sort of thing I wanted to raise with each of you. Rosylin, you've been quite involved in your community. And I wondered if you could speak to how that enhances your overall well-being.
Oh, wow. It's incredible. Because as I said, in my job, I worked actually for the airport. So the first time I got diagnosed, I would always be somewhere, and somebody would walk up to me and start talking to me as if they knew me, just because they knew me from the airport. And that didn't change after my diagnosis. Sometimes I get a little annoyed, if I'm out shopping with my daughter or just hanging out, and somebody comes up and strikes up this conversation, about whatever it might be. But what has happened is that same group of people, they put me on their prayer list. They've prayed for me. They walk up to me even now. And I left work officially in 2018. I think my official retirement date was 2019, the fall of 2019. So here we are in 2022, and people still walk up to me. I have no idea who they are. And they ask me, how you doing? How are you really doing? And that doesn't offend me because I know that they care about me. So I've created this, well, I didn't create, but there's a whole community out there that cares.
You've been a part of it, significant part of it.
I guess I have.
Yeah.
And I've, I saw the spinal doc the other day, and he walked into the room, and the first thing he said to me was, he said, yeah, I think about you often, and I've gotten somebody in my family has been diagnosed with cancer. He said, and then I really thought about you. He said, and I saw you when you were walking in today, and I was so excited to come in the room and catch up with you. And he said, I'm not excited, that you're here because you have cancer. I'm excited because I've had the opportunity to meet you and engage with you. And again, it is that feeling of people really being vested in me. I was at the lymphedema specialist a couple of months ago, and there was a doc who's head of the Moving On program. I knew his name, but I had no idea that he knew mine. And he said to me, he came into the room, there was an issue that we were having. He was the doc that was there. He examined me, and as he was walking out of the room, he said, you know that this community cares about you. He said, and we're not going to let anything happen to you. So you don't need to worry. We got lots of arrows. And if we have to sling every single one of them, to keep you here, then we will. So that is important to me. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. And so the greater Greenville, South Carolina community has been very, very supportive of me. They have done everything I've asked them to do. I asked them to raise money and, give to a cause, and they will. And I know that not everybody has that. And so I'm really blessed about that. And again, to me, it is just part of everything I've done up until my original diagnosis in 2015 to right now has been preparing me to do the things that I do right now, which is try to figure out every day how to make a difference, how to stay involved, how to not sit in a corner and just wait for the phone to ring to either get test results or get scheduled to do a test or see the doc or get a call from the doc. It's like, okay, I'm going to do that, but I can't let that be the only thing that I do. So yeah, my community is very, very important to me. And the support of that community is just, I can't even begin to put it into words. If I had 1,000 tongues and another 100 years to say so, I would never be able to tell you guys and tell this community how much I appreciate them and I appreciate their support.
Well, and it's very moving to hear how much you allow that support in, because that's not always easy, right? But sometimes we're surrounded by support and can't allow it in. So it's moving to hear that you do allow that in.
No, it's not at all. And a lot of people can't let it in.
Yeah.
And, and one of the things that's kind of unique to the African American community is that we don't spend a lot of time talking to each other in families about chronic diseases and family history in terms of health. And so it's not, it's not easy. I mean, that's not the case in my family. We tell each other everything, but I realized that really isn't the case. And that plays into these disparities in healthcare that I'm talking about,
Mhm.
it's not all the system's fault. A great deal of it rests on the shoulders of us who are part of the African American community. And we have to do our part. And for me, doing our part means that we have to know our family history. We have to share our family history. We have to not be ashamed of our family history. And
Mhm.
we have to not uh, take responsibility in the sense of it's my fault, but take responsibility in the sense of this is a part of of my culture, and this is a part of my family. And if I want to make it better for the nieces and nephews, or the nieces and nephews and the granddaughters, that are coming behind me, then I have a duty to share that. And so, I feel really blessed that one, I can share this journey with my Greenville community, and they willingly share it with me, and give me feedback and support when I need it, even when they don't know that that's what they're doing, and to share it with my family and really anybody who will listen, to tell you the truth.
Thank you. Thank you. Lesley, I wanted you to weigh in on this. You've also, a big part of your living with metastatic disease has been your involvement in your community, and you've created an amazing project, Life
Yeah.
organization that you've created. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that's meant to you and your involvement in that and how that came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So I have always been an advocate. I mean, since I was a little girl, I was always the one that was sticking up for somebody on the playground that was getting picked on. And so advocacy just has really run in my blood. Um, as I stated before, running my nonprofit of bringing therapeutic art into the prison system. So, working with the marginalized community has always just been a huge passion of mine. And so when I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, I realized that we are, in our own way, a marginalized community,
Mhm.
because people don't understand what being metastatic means. They think it's all, pink ribbons and relays for life and all of that, when there's just so much more that goes into it. So I started my advocacy career actually in fundraising, and ran for 7 years, Climb for a Cure in Southern California, where we raised money for research. But really, what is always on my heart is quality of life, thrivership, well-being. It was a part of my life before cancer, and has been very important to me as I walk through, with living with MBC. And so one of the things that I came up against in cancer care delivery were the gatekeepers for survivorship programs. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have anything for you because you are still in treatment.
Hmm.
Our survivorship program is for those that are post-treatment.
Hmm.
And so right away, I knew that, oh my goodness, I don't want to be an elephant in the room wherever I go. And oh my goodness, she's stage 4. That's who we do not want to be her. So, just kind of, I never really found a support group. I wasn't into the online support groups. I wanted a place where I could go, where I felt like I belonged, that I could share, where people would hold space for me. That we weren't there to try to fix each other. We were there to live well and to grow together. And so I thought to myself, well, we need to bridge this gap in survivorship between those that are post-treatment and those of us that are living with metastatic cancers, no matter what. We have to make room for those with metastatic cancers. So I decided, I'm like, well, we can talk about it, we can survey it, we can do webinars, we can do conference talks, but until somebody does something, it's not going to start to move the needle. So being who I am, I'm like, well, I want to start to move the needle. So I'm going to do this thing, and let's see what happens to it. So it is a virtual wellness house for those that are living with metastatic breast cancer and their loved ones. We have been going for about just a little bit over a year. We have over 300 members currently. And we do all our virtual wellness house has different rooms. So you can do therapeutic art in the art studio. You go into the kitchen. We have nutritional stuff that goes on. We have virtual cooking classes. We have Ask the Experts that come in that talk about, financial. We have a legal clinic I have somebody on my team. Well, I just want to say that Project Life is 98% run by those that are living with the disease. So we run the organization. So the organization is run by those that are living with MBC. So we know, we live the experience. And it's been such a phenomenal experience for me, building this little community that we have, that it pours into my cup quite often. But there's another thing that I also have to remember is that I need to take cancer breaks. So that doesn't mean taking a break from treatment. That means I need to step away from the cancer arena and shut off social media and shut off, reading every day, new articles. And I need to just go and be with Lesley and do the things that Lesley needs to do, so that, because it can get very easy to get wrapped up into this whole thing of just living with cancer, breathing cancer. And, I'm always, I live with this disease, but I do not want to live in it. So how can I live with it, and also, live the best life that I possibly can?
Thank you. I think that's an important reminder for people that you are larger than this diagnosis. Yeah, thank you. Is there a way to get the link up to Project Life on the website? Does anybody know if that's going to be put up there? I think it is, but how would people find that, Lesley?
So you can come and visit us at our booth. We do have a booth in the exhibit hall.
Great.
So yeah, you can get information there, and myself and Melinda, who is my director of Healing Circles, is also in the booth area that she's willing to answer questions. But we'd love to get you signed up.
Okay, so again, it's Project Life for those listening. Thank you. A couple things you said made me think about. There was a portion in this essay that we're using where the writer talks about pain that she has experienced as being a call to self-compassion. And you've both touched a little bit on things you do to be compassionate to yourself. I wondered if you could speak to that concept of self-compassion, because I think that's not easy for people. We're often so much kinder to those around us than we are to ourselves. And I wondered if you could speak to that. Rosylin, how does that idea of self-compassion resonate with you?
Well, first I want to tell Lesley that I'm one of her 300 members. And I love your site. And it is so insightful, and there are lots of things to be learned there. So I applaud you for creating it, and I thank you for doing that. Self-compassion. Well, I still believe in taking care of me. Even when the days are dark, I know that there'll be light tomorrow. I have a really hard time with pity parties. And I've had to be reminded by my friends, by people in the faith community, that it's okay to not be okay. And I just feel so out of control, on those days that I am overwhelmed. And when I'm overwhelmed, I find that I'm not overwhelmed by what tomorrow might bring, but rather I'm overwhelmed when I look behind me and I see how far I've come. That is overwhelming to me. And sometimes that's tough. Sometimes that's really tough. That's when my pity parties just they come when I start to think about the road that I've traveled. Um, and then, as quickly as I can, I remember that I'm putting an ED on the road on the word travel. And it's traveled, the road that I've traveled. And from my perspective on that day, whenever it is, whatever I'm looking back at, I just believe that tomorrow cannot be any worse than yesterday. It just simply can't. It just won't be. I won't let it be anything more than that. So, COVID has put a damper on things. Uh, I like shopping, um, and I've had to figure out a new way to do that. So my husband says that every day there's a package on the door that says HSN or QVC. It's not quite that often, but it might be once a week for sure. Um, I believe in massages. Those are wonderful, and it is just such a release. And to me, it's a compassionate gift that is for me, that is orchestrated by me, and is enjoyed by me. And so that's very important to me. And like Lesley said, I think some days you have to walk away from the cancer conversation. You never walk away from cancer just simply because of the diagnosis that we have, but you can certainly walk away from the conversation. And I think that's important. And so I try really hard to do that periodically, to walk away from the conversation and just take some time just for me. Um, like I said, I was diagnosed in 2015. And honestly, with all that I told you I've done, and there's been a lot since then, but 2022 has been my roughest year by far. I've had all sorts of things, reactions, bad reactions to chemotherapy. Some chemotherapy drugs accelerated my cataracts, had 2 cataract surgeries. I had vocal cord surgery about 2 weeks ago. I mean, all of those kinds of things. And some people might say, well, now you're fighting terminal cancer. So why did you go in and have vocal cord surgery? Well, because I can't talk about this if I can't talk. And talking is how I've made my living. And so
you do it very well, Rosylin.
I need to be able to talk, and I need to be able to see, and those things are very important to me. The seeing I got completely under control. The talking, is still a little bit of a work in progress. I still have some, swollen vocal cords, but that's okay. I sound much better today than I did like a month ago. I sounded like Kermit the Frog, and that just was not going to do. So I think just taking time to tune in to what makes you happy, what makes your heart happy, and do some of that, no matter how ridiculous it may seem to other people. Do what makes your heart happy. Because if you do what makes your heart happy today, then tomorrow you can get up and fight a new fight. And it's like a whole new ball game. At least that's the way it is for me.
Thank you.
Micheline, I'd like to, I'm Kathy, and I've been reading the Q&As, and there's so much in the chat. There's so much appreciation for the discussion, for both what Lesley and Rosylin are saying and for the topic itself, Micheline. But one issue that does keep cropping up, a lot of people become very involved with others with metastatic breast cancer, and the losses of friends are really hard. And they're wondering what advice you might have around wellness to help you both love and grieve and continue to love.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. So I think this is where self-compassion really comes in. I've been in this long enough that I've lost many, many, many friends, and it doesn't get any easier. I think at some point, I think about, okay, I am 10 years down the road, and oh my goodness, so-and-so only had 2. And I remember going to a webinar where there was a therapist that was talking about survivor guilt. And we talked about, those that have gone on before us. And she asked about survivor's guilt. And I was like, oh my goodness, I feel it so much. And she said, what are you guilty of? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, did you do anything to them that, and that's the reason why they died? And, are you guilty of something? And I said, no. I said, we all live with metastatic breast cancer, and, that's just the statistic. And, and she's like, then don't feel guilty. She's like, realize that this is happening, and have compassion for yourself, and have compassion for the family that, lost their loved one. But there's no reason why you need to feel guilty about why you're still here. And she made it a point to bring up my mentor, which was Jill Cohen, God bless her. She passed away in 2016. And she said, what would Jill say to you? Would she say, Lesley, you need to be upset because I'm not here anymore? And I'm like, no way. Jill would be the first one to tell me to get back out there and give her story a voice, and to keep doing what I'm doing. And so, I think that for us, when we lose those around us, I think compassion, showing ourselves compassion in that way, is so very, very important. It's okay to grieve the loss. It's okay to cry. It's okay to remember. And our friends want to be remembered. They want to be remembered 2 or 3, 5, 10 years down the line, of the things that they may have said that have helped us in our own journey. And I think that it's really important to give your grief a place. I mean, you're not going to stay in it, but you're like, okay, grief, you can be here for a time. Let's feel this. And then, all right, now I'm going to put you over here because now I need to get on and I need to do something else. But allowing yourself to feel those emotions, I think, is really, really important for well-being. Is like, don't be upset with yourself if you feel angry, if you feel sad. Allow yourself to feel those things and just say, okay, I felt them. Now I'm going to pivot and I'm going to move on, because those emotions are just part of our human nature, and it's how we're made up, and we shouldn't negate any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Rosylin, anything to add?
Well, I mean, I think I agree with that, 100%. And I think what there have been friends that I've lost that I've certainly cried about, and grieved about. But as Lesley said, if I were to ask them, well, what do you want me to do? They would say, well, you need to get on with it. You're still here, and you still need to tell the story, and you need to still try to make a difference. So cry for me for a little while, but then smile because you had the opportunity for our paths to cross. And I think that that's just the way we have to look at grief, because everything has a season and everything is going to die, at some point or another, whether it's your favorite plant, which dies very early in my house, or if it's your pet, or if it's your friend, or if it's your whoever. I think that I try, after the tears, I try then to remember how blessed I am to have known this person, and the way she lit up the room, even when she wasn't feeling well, she lit up the room. Or the fact that, you get a note and it says she died. It's like, what do you mean she died? I just talked to her 2 weeks ago and she was fine. Well, she died. And I think about, some of the women, there was a woman that died recently that, even her closest family and friends said it was just unexpected. I mean, they didn't expect her to die on that day. And I thought to myself, well, now that's just like her, just to say, okay, that's it. I'm calling it off. The race is over. I'm done. And she left. Wouldn't we all be so lucky, to be able to look death right in the eye and say, okay, I, you know, it's time for me to go now, and I'm gonna go in a rip roaring blaze of glory just like I lived. And I want people to maybe cry a little bit, but remember that I lived my life like a rip roaring blaze of glory. And I think if you can do that, you can move on, or at least you can move on for the moment. And it doesn't mean that you don't go back and cry some more, because I've done that too, and I'm sure I will again.
Sure. Micheline, any observations you would like to make?
I think these women have said it all. There's a balance between feeling it and allowing it in, and then taking care of yourself when you need to soften the harshness of it. Yeah, beautiful.
There's a wonderful chat going on about dancing and sharing other ways that people express joy, and it's been a great panel, and I just wonder if you have some parting advice to people who are with us in wellness.
Well, for me,
go ahead, Lesley, and then Rosylin.
Okay. So I think for me, with this topic of wellness and well-being, what I think I want to share is that wellness and well-being is not static. It changes. Your wellness and your well-being will change. Your ideas might change. Things that you like might change. And that's okay. And actually embrace those changes, especially, as we are getting older, to know that there are some things that, we used to love to do that were really good for our well-being and wellness, and now we can't do them. Maybe there's something else that you want to try, that you want to explore. So just the idea of knowing that nothing has to be static, that your life is ever evolving, no matter how old you are, as you stay present to it and mindful to it.
Rosylin.
I think I just want people to remember what this conversation was about, and remember that there is a difference between wellness and well-being. And there will be days that you will not feel well, you physically not feel well, but that doesn't have to define you unless you allow it to define you. So to know that there's a difference, and seek every day to draw the line between wellness and well-being, and not let them intersect and intertwine. Because if you do, it's going to be a very, very rough road.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just remembering that there is a difference between wellness and well-being. And before this panel, some of you may have thought they were one and the same. And I hope that if that's what you thought when you entered this discussion and entered this conference on the last day, that you're walking away now knowing that there is quite a difference between wellness and well-being. And it is your job to distinguish that for yourself in your life, and seek to walk down that road of well-being.